Good morning. I'm Tony Momberger with the Redlands Daily Facts doing another video interview for the 125th anniversary of the City of Redlands. I'm here this morning with Curtis Allen Sr., the Redlands band director and a major part of Redlands history and current times. You lead the 4th of July band.
I lead the 4th of July band.
And you do the sing-alongs at the bowl.
And I do the community sings at the bowl.
And, okay, how did you get started? Let's start at the
On
beginning.
what?
With the 4th of July band. Was this your idea, or did you take over from someone else?
Yes, it was my idea. No, there wasn't any 4th of July band. There was no band. All it was the high school band. And in the summertime, the high school band disbanded. And they couldn't get them back together. The leader wasn't willing to, and the students didn't want to, so they never could have a band on the 4th of July.
And you're talking about the Redlands High School band.
That's what I'm talking about, the Redlands High School band. No one could get them to play on the 4th of July because school had been out for 3 weeks, and they weren't going to do it. So Mrs. Ditchfield was the big spark plug. She was an Irish Colleen, Tom Ditchfield's wife, and she was working with Bill McCalman to do a 4th of July celebration, and she was trying to get a band in this little parade they wanted to do, and she couldn't get a band to come. She couldn't get a military band to come. She couldn't, there wasn't anything, and she was just, oh gosh, she tried to start a little community band herself. So I went to the meeting of the community band with my old French horn. I thought, I'll play in it. Well, the meeting was a disaster. Nothing happened at all, except that an old gentleman that was there that had originally directed the Redlands American Legion band in World War I was there with a box of the music. And I said to him, you know, if you'll let me keep that music, maybe someday I'll be able to put a band together and I'll use that music.
What year was this?
Oh, it was about 1979 or 78, something like that. So his name was Michael D'Alba. He was a tremendous character in town. Anyway, so he said, all right. That time I was living in the Morey house and I had a lot of room up in the attic, so I carried that box up and put it in the attic. Well, subsequent to that, I began working with some players at the Bethany Church where I was the choir director and put together an orchestra. And we would play. I didn't want to be away from my family too many nights. So I said to the people in the orchestra, we'll have to rehearse at my house. Well, that was the Morey house. So it wasn't a big deal. All you had to do was move. There wasn't a lot of furniture in it anyway. We always had our furniture pulled well out from the wall so the house looked like it was furnished, but it could have definitely had a few more pieces in it. We couldn't afford it. But anyway, so we pushed that back and brought in the folding chairs and the music stands and all that, and we would rehearse in the drawing room because there was a piano there, this piano, in fact. And we had lots of things. We played at the church, and we were good for about 2 years. Then I was at the 4th of July with the Dombrowski family and sharing their blanket and all this, and I said to Mrs. Dombrowski, you know, it's just a crime that there isn't any Sousa music being played in this park on the 4th of July. And she said, well, yes, it is. There was you know, country guitar and that kind of thing, but there wasn't any, nothing. So she said, why don't you do something about it? And I thought, well, I don't know. So subsequently, one time the orchestra was over at the house, and the 4th of July was approaching must have been probably March, I suppose. And I said, you guys, do you string people, the violins and stuff, do you mind just going out in the kitchen and having coffee while I work with the winds in here and I see if we can play a march? And they said, okay. And the wind said, well, we try. So I ran up to the attic and got that music. We played a march. And it sounded pretty good. I said, well, what do you think? Should we try to play over in Sylvan Park? Why not? Let's see what we can do. I said, well, we can't rehearse on Tuesday at the house here. I can't, we'll have to rehearse up at the church on Sunday afternoon. It's the only time I'd have a chance. Oh, well, that's week. So then everybody got excited about it. I went out and got more music and found music, borrowed music from the high school. Patrick Winter was there then. Mm-hmm. And he was real happy to loan stuff and got some of the high school students to play too. And we were recruiting all over people. So
just by word of mouth?
Yes, by that and by me on the phone. My God, I've spent hundreds of hours on the phone. So you know, and then when the players don't come to a rehearsal, you call them and say, did you quit? Are you coming? You know, are you okay? You know, you have to keep doing this because it's all volunteers. They have to want to be there, or they have to be willing to be there. Sometimes it's more that. But anyway. Bill McCalman says I treat him like I pay him, which I don't, of course. anyway.
Now, what year was this? At this point?
81.
81, okay.
81. That was the first year we played. And we ended up with a really good sounding band of 44 players.
44 players,
we had 44.
All volunteers,
yes,
word of mouth.
Yes, yes. And we sounded great. We played a very limited list of music. I've kept it. I know what it is. And but we played well. We played well. And
had you directed a band before?
No.
Wow.
I had directed the orchestra, but not a band. Well, I take that back. When I was in high school, I got to be the assistant band director at Pacific High School, so I did get to direct that band a little bit, you know, but not much. I just watched all the directors I ever was with, you know, and learned from that.
So what was your job at the time?
I was, at that point, I think I had begun my new career as a social worker at the county social services, which was an interesting new career because it was a very low entry job. I was a CETA employee. I had been in business, and we were having a downturn right then. It was hard for people to find work, and so they had a job fair, and I had an epiphany in my life where I had been sent to do a self-study and see if I shouldn't change my careers from business. And I came back down from the mountain, you might as well say, because I did go to a mountain and study, that I needed to be in the helping profession, which I had not even believed in when I was growing up. I thought all these social workers were just a pox, you know. And here I am one. So
okay, so
I was very successful at it. I found I loved helping people, and I loved accepting people. I found that I could accept people, no matter how screwed up or, you know, disabled or whatever. I could do that. I could, you know, and it was a gift I had. And also, I could lead people, so I ended up supervising a group of social workers.
Okay.
But anyway, that's what I was doing when I started the band.
And now you've got your first year. You show up at Sylvan Park, 44 people.
Yeah. Right.
Playing John
and everybody
Sousa.
was thrilled to death. And Bill McCalman couldn't believe it. And he said, next year I'm going to put you in the stadium.
Who's been in it the longest other than you?
Mike Shea and his wife Ann. She plays flute and piccolo. He plays drums. And let's see, possibly, Curtis Jr., my son, who played in the very first band.
Is he the only one that's been in it from the beginning?
Well, these other two, Mike and Ann.
They've been in all,
oh, yes.
all 30
oh, yes.
1 years?
Absolutely. In fact, Mike was one of the ones that encouraged me to even do it when I approached. He and I had known each other when we were students at Valley College in San Bernardino, and we played in the Valley College band, which was under Paul Oxley. It was a very fine band, and we even went on tour with it. He played percussion, and I played the French horn. And then our third friend was Tom Dunn, that played the tuba. And between Mike and Tom and I, in the rehearsals, if we wanted to have fun with the director, we could change the tempo, because the French horn plays the offbeats, you know, the tuba plays the downbeats. By the way, if you see me look down, it's because my dog keeps wandering in. She's a Dalmatian named Poppy, and she's just lovely, but she's not going to hurt anything. Anyway, so we could just take the tempo. If he was trying to get us to go, we could slow it down, you know, and he'd go crazy up on the podium. We just had fun. Anyway, so.
The bandstand at Sylvan Park seems like it was built for you.
It was.
It was.
Yes.
But I've seen
after
photos
we were successful
of Sylvan Park back in the day, and there's a bandstand there.
Yes, that bandstand was wood, and that bandstand was removed prior to about 1955.
If you weren't here, what was it for?
It was for the Redlands band. There was one.
There was a Redlands band. Oh,
gosh. There was a band in Redlands in 1888. If you look back at that big book of the Moores put out, Redlands Yesterdays or something, that has the cover shot of up in Smiley Park with the Surrey going through and all that. It's a large format book full of beautiful pictures. There's a photograph of the Redlands Orchestra, which there was one in the 1880s, and also the Redlands band. Mr. Pierce had the band. He played clarinet in the orchestra, but he directed the band.
Did you know him? No.
I knew his daughter, Margaret Peg. She was an old maid, that taught piano and all that, and was in the Spinet Club. The Spinet is the Redlands Music Club. It's the oldest music club in the West. Quite a wonderful thing. I'm in it. I like it. I think it's fun.
How many people are in the band now?
It varies. We're going to play in January at the County Museum, and we'll probably play with about 40, I imagine, for that.
Okay, it's about the same amount then.
No, normally on the 4th of July we have about 70. Oh. We have had as many as 109, which was totally unwieldy. I never want to do that again. But, too many folders, too many stands, too many chairs, oh, God. And you can't get everybody to play together. The more people you have, when it's amateurs, the harder it is to get them together and come in on and one.
Mm-hmm. And they're moving everything from Sylvan Park to town.
Oh, yeah, we have to do that. But 4th of July rents us a nice big van. And so the day or two before the 4th, we take our equipment that we keep at Bethany. By the way, Bethany loans us the use of all their folding chairs. We own our stands, of which some of them were given to us by Redlands High School as cast-offs, and then I repaired them, and others were purchased by the 4th of July Committee. Anyway, so we own our stands. So we have our stands, our chairs, and all of our percussion. We have the timpani, the big kettle drums, and the bass drum, and all this thing, and the chimes and stuff. Anyway, and so we load that all into this thing, and then we get over to Sylvan Park, and we put it into the bandstand, and then when we're through at the bandstand at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it all goes back into the truck, and then we drive the truck over into the stadium, and they unload it, and then they set us up over there. There's a lot of logistics. We have volunteers that help us always.
Who's the youngest player that's performed in the band? You get kids, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We had several this last year, several 6th graders, and maybe a 5th grader or two. That's just about as young as it goes. We could have had a 4th grader sometime. Certainly, Miles Davis was one of the youngest that played with us. Miles Davis is a student at an Eastern Conservatory in New York.
Berkeley in Boston?
Yes, in Boston, that's it. And he is an absolute prodigy. But he was playing in my son's junior high school band. Curtis directs the Beatty Middle School band. And Curtis said, "You've got to hear Miles." Miles played, for him, he played the mallets, that's the vibraphone and xylophone and all that, but he also played clarinet. So I thought, well, we'll try him on clarinet. I put him on 2nd clarinet, and Dr. Korfmacher turned around and said, "You come right up here and play next to me." And Dr. Korfmacher was a virtuoso clarinetist, a virtuoso. But Miles, he said, "Miles, you're up here, 1st clarinet. You're right here with me." And that was when he was just little. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Of course, now he's gone on, and I see Mrs. Davis once in a while.
Who's the oldest? Well, you don't have to tell me the name, but what's the range?
I've had a player that was 90.
Wow.
I've had a number of players in their 80s.
Who can
perform
yes. For all of those hours
in
the heat? With that kind of lung power?
Yes. In fact, one of my lead trumpets, I think last year was his last year, because in addition to his age, he is beginning to have some memory issues, to put it nicely. Mm-hmm. And I think that and it's very sad, because his son, who is a wonderful middle-aged, both of them. Well, I don't want to go beyond that, but anyway, I've had that, and we had a fabulous clarinet player that wrote music for us, and was just a brilliant man. Lou Ferraro was his name, and one year, I think we were playing in the bowl on the stage, and he got up and well, it wasn't that bad, but it must have been the bandstand. But anyway, he walked into the audience and tried to get the children out there to shut up. Yes, and he didn't do it very well, and it was just, he would have known as a conductor that it was inappropriate for one of the players to ever leave the formation and do something like that. He was a conductor. He was a master conductor. But at that point in his life, he wasn't thinking like that anymore. And so he did that. So that was, I think, that would have been his last year with us, too. But anyway, we've had some interesting experiences. We've never had any real disasters, though, where somebody fell through the head of the drum or anything.
Let's move to Community Sings. Okay. You brought up the bowl.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing that?
Well, I began in '79 on that, so 2 years more than the band. And I had wanted to do it for a number of years prior to that, because Wilbur Showalter had been doing it for about 25 years, I think, 20-some. Anyway, and he was aging out. And I didn't know it, but he had cancer too. And nobody talked, he didn't know. Anyway, we found out later. Mm-hmm. But anyway, he was getting real grouchy and stuff like that, and he was losing his pep up on the stage. And his accompanist was Ruth Fowler. Now, Ruth was my junior high school voice director. She had the choruses at Arrowview Junior High, and I went there, San Bernardino. So I'd known her from that. I had soloed for her as a boy soprano. And we just were very dear to one another. So I said, and we were in the Spinet together too. I used to go and get her and take her to the meetings. Anyway, I said, Ruth, I would like to lead these community sings, because I had led a lot of people in singing over the years at Y Camp and places and stuff. And I'd like to do this. I think I could do a good job. I think I could do it. She said, well, we'll see. But she said, Wilbur's doing it. I said, well, yeah, okay, and I'll just... Well, anyway, a year or so after that, Wilbur quit and died fairly short after that, but he didn't die immediately. Anyway, he quit. And they had to put somebody in there, so they got Alan Ritchie. Now, Alan was a wonderful band director up at Moore Junior High. And also, the thing that Alan did that was so fun was he put together a little band every year to play for the Y Circus. They had a live circus band at the Y in those days. Right there in there. Yes, a circus band playing all the old circus music.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
That.
And my kids played for him, when they were in high school. Alan did that. Oh, it was just wonderful. Coble must have put him up to it. Roy Coble probably got him to do it. Well, anyhow, so they put Alan in. Well, it wasn't Alan's cup of tea. It really wasn't. And the audience wasn't. And I was out there, and I said to Ruth, "Oh, for God's sake, Ruth, can't I possibly get a try?" She said, "Well, I've said so, but they won't listen to me." Well, anyway. So the next year, this was 1 year Alan did it. The next year, Alan was the director. He didn't think to tell them that he could only do the first 2 sings, and then he was going on sabbatical. He forgot to tell them, or didn't, I don't know, or they didn't ask. They're funny, Cole Halsey didn't really work with contracts in those days. He just expected that if he said, "I want it this way," it would just happen that way. That would be it. So that's how he dealt with me too. But anyway, so here they are in a muddle, and they decide they'll give everybody a chance at the community sing. So they gave Chuck DeMergent a chance, and they gave Jack, what Cummings from the university? Jack what? Uh-huh. Yeah, Jack. He got a chance at it. I got a chance at it. There might have been somebody else, but after the other 2 guys, Conant called me up and said, "Will you finish the season for me?" There were about 4 more left. Uh-huh. I said, "Well, sure." So I finished. That was 1979. I did part of that season. And on the last night, without discussing it with me whatever, after the sing was over, Paul, he came out to greet the people as he always did, And,
Paul.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah, not Paul. This was way before Paul. This was Cole Halsey.
Oh, Conant. Uh-huh.
Yeah, Conant. Paul wasn't involved at all. He might have been around the edge somewhere.
So we're still in 81.
Oh, before that.
Okay.
Before that, we're in maybe 80, I guess.
Okay.
And so Cole came out. We'd finished the saying, and gave me a bow, and Kim took a bow, or Harriet, whichever was accompanying me, and he said, "Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to announce to you the community sing leader for next year, Curtis Allen." And he never had said a word to me about it. So I found out just when the audience did. Uh-huh. But I didn't care because I wanted to do it. No, but it was just his way, It was just hilarious.
How long are you going to keep doing it?
Till I can't.
Okay.
Right now, I'm less apt to stumble down the stairs than I was a year ago, which I have done before. Although I always say, what do I say? Grace eludes me.
But your
and I
eyesight
fell off.
your eyesight is better now than it was last year.
Well, it wasn't my eyesight.
No?
No, it was my bulk. It throws off my balance. I keep working on it. It doesn't go away. I don't know what to do.
Okay, well, when you retire,
Yes?
I want to take over community singing. I'm saying it for the first time right now.
I've been looking for a successor.
We should describe for the audience who doesn't know what community sing is.
All right, I can tell you what it is. It's a leader on the stage with a microphone and a piano accompanist, and the leader puts together a half hour of songs that are familiar or being introduced, that have beautiful music in some of them, have very silly, hilarious music in some of them, and have gestures that go with some of them, so that the audience has to get involved. But the idea of the whole thing, of a community sing, see, a sing-along and a community sing are just a little bit different. A community sing, the word is community. And what I do as a community sing leader, I try to pull the audience of all these people that have come into the bowl from wherever they into some kind of a unit of a community by having them do something all together that they will do. And the more I can get them to do, the better it works. When I can break down their inhibitions and get them to reach up and pull the whistle on Coming Round the Mountain with a big gesture like this while they're singing, or just getting to lean back and forth while they're singing, and singing a waltz, Daisy, Daisy. And you see them doing it all around in the bowl. And of course, some of them are doing it backwards and running into each other. And then they're laughing. And they're all, but you have a community there. And when you've got the community developed, as you get through the sing, you get through it, then you bring them into some beautiful, sobering, wonderful piece of music that is just going to lift their spirits together. Because there's a lot of spirit lifting that goes on in the community sing. It's almost holy in a way. Of course, it really isn't, but it has kind of that kind of a thing. And you, when I'm successful, and I almost always am, and not always, when I get done, the audience has had an experience that they never expected to have. And they have a feeling for the people that are sitting around them, and a feeling for being in the city of Redlands, and a feel for being in that Redlands Bowl. And Carmen Dragon was our symphony director for about 4 years before he died. One of the greatest musicians in the United States, very famous and very gifted. And he one night after I finished the community sing, and he was back there waiting to go on, he said, I enjoyed you tonight. I said, well, thank you very much, Carmen. We were on a first name basis, which I thought was a great blessing for me, but he really did like me. And he said, I said, well, I hope I didn't go too long. Oh, he said, Curtis, after you're done with that audience, I couldn't do anything wrong. They're so ready. They're so ready. No matter what I did, they'd love it. And that was the greatest compliment that I will ever receive, because I don't know anybody else of that level that would ever talk to me. Esa-Pekka Salonen doesn't know who I am. I know that. I don't care about him anyway.
I want to pull back before I'm going to move on to the Morey Mansion, but first I want to talk about, you were on one of the T-shirts.
Yeah.
One of the 4th of July T-shirts.
That's right. In 1988, when we celebrated the centennial, Bill McCallum and a committee put together a great big celebration down on State Street with a table that ran all the way up and down the street so we could all eat, and there was a program in the Ed Hales Park. And so for that, the band was played for that program, as the Redlands band had 100 years before, and even some of the same music, if we could. And also, we had an arranger that had joined us. He was an old gentleman, about 80 years old, that played with us, Herb Maddock. And he had been a professional musician in New York City and New Jersey. So I had been given copies of some of the old Redlands songs that had been written by people in Redlands in the old days that would wax poetic and write poetry and write music. And so we had Put Me Off at Redlands by Mr. Pettibone, who was the ticket agent at the Southern Pacific. And then we had Radiant Redlands, too. And so I gave those to Herb, and he wrote them out for the band. Beautiful band arrangements of them. So we played those at that event. And that was a very great day. But that day, your granddad took a snapshot of me while I was directing the band. And without my ever knowing it, he went home and he painted the thing. And I didn't know about it. It was months later when Nelda Stuck said, Curtis, have you been down to the Art Association down on Straits? No, not lately. Well, you're going to go down there, and I tell you what you're going to do. You're going to buy art. You're going to go down there and buy art. I said, what do you mean? You're going to go down there and buy, there's a painting of you, you're going to go down there and buy it. And if you don't, I'm going to buy it. So it's up to you. So I went down there, and here it was. And so I did buy it. And then I said, well, now at last, with all the junk that I've collected, there will be one heirloom that my children can fight over, and that will be that painting. They can fight over that. I'm not going to tell them who gets it. I'm just going to say, go for it. Well, you know what happened? Your grandmother, Dorothy, this is Landeros, by the way, Dorothy, called me up one day, and she said, you know, Al did a second painting of you when he did that first one. I said he did. Well, I know. He had done two of these, and one of them was sold down in Laguna. I remember that. But this was the better of the two, in my opinion. Anyway, I was fortunate. But this was a completely different view. This was a straight-on view, and it was on a horizontal format instead of vertical. And she said, he did that point. Would you like it? I said, well, of course I'd like it. But doggone if she didn't bring it over and give it to me. So now I've got 3 kids and I've got 2 paintings. It's still not going to work. Anyway, the other one's upstairs because it's egotistic enough to have the one up on the wall in here. You know, that's pretty bad. What I have in there in my study is a phonograph record collection. Just all these albums of old records like they play on this Victrola here. Yeah, things like that. That's what I have in there. I don't have any room to put any plaques up anyway.
Let's talk about the Morey Mansion. I
Okay.
did not know that you had lived in the Morey Mansion. We're
Oh.
interviewing right now, and I probably made a shocked face.
Oh,
How long did you live there? Tell me
I
about
bought it in 1968 and saved it. The plan that the people had was to tear it down and to create 4 view lots on the property.
Oh my goodness.
That was what. But they were reluctant to tear it down because they had lived in it since 1946, and they really sort of appreciated the beauty in it, but not like I did. I had been in touch with them since I was in high school. When I was in 1956, I got my Model T Ford, which was eccentric for those days, but I had a lot of fun with it. I don't care. I love old stuff. And my best friend and I, Clyde, were out driving. I would load it up with people from San Bernardino and bring them over to Redlands and impress them with all the Victorian homes, which I loved so much. I just loved the big old, anything with 2 stories was all I had to have. But if it had an elevator, that was the big deal, you know. There's 4 or 5 houses in this town with elevators.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'd take them over and I'd show them this and I'd show them that. Whatever I didn't know, I'd make it up, you know. So some of them still think that the Kimberleys had diamond mines in Africa as well. Well, I used to say that. It is Kimberley, you know, Africa. Well, anyway, I was terrible. I still am. But anyway, so Clyde egged me on. He said, "Why don't you just drive into the front driveway and we'll go knock it out?" Because I wanted to see it, John. Mm-hmm. Oh God, I don't know, Clyde. Just do it. And the driveway at that time was nothing but huge potholes. You went like this, like this, like this. The paving was gone, mud, everything. But I drove into the driveway. And it really looked like an abandoned house. It looked like an abandoned property. Shades were always pulled down. No light ever showed out of it. And so knocked on the door, and Mrs. Wiseman came to the door. She was very sweet. And we talked to her, and she said, "You may come in and look at the downstairs if you like." These 2 college boys, high school. Anyway, so we did, and I was amazed. I knew I liked the outside. I had no idea the inside. Original wallpaper from 1891, you know, in William Morris style. That's gone now.
You're saying 2 high school boys knocked on her door?
Yes, and she let us come in.
And she invited you in to see her home?
Yes, yes. And I said, I would like to buy this from you someday. And she kind of snickered, because here's a high school boy. No, I said, I would like to buy this from you someday. She said, well, I suppose there'll be a time when we will want to sell it, but right now, her father and his mother were living there. One of them was in the gardener's cottage behind, and they had 2 boys that were still, 2 of their sons were still there. One of them was younger, Bruce, and Bob was our age, but he wasn't home that day. Anyway, so I went home and I sent her a thank you note, and when Phyllis and I got married, we sent her a Christmas card with a photograph of us, and when Curtis was born, the same thing. And, and they would send back to us. So we were just kind of this, she knew we were there. And Phyllis and I set up housekeeping in San Bernardino in a very nice house, but it was a bad location. It was on the 16th and Waterman in San Bernardino, and Waterman was beginning to get bad. It had been a very nice area once, but it was getting to get bad. And so we were ready, and we were there for 5 years, and it began to get really wild. It got to the point where I just couldn't stand it anymore. So, and by that time I had saved up some money too. And we began looking for houses in Redlands. And Dad put us in. First of all, I have to go back. When I was engaged to Phyllis, I said, I'd like to have you see my dream house, just to see what you think about it. So we called up the Weismans, and they said, oh, yes, come over. So we hadn't met, just before we were married, see. We went over there, and Phyllis was crazy about it.
Well, it's everyone's dream
Well,
house.
she was crazy about it. Phyllis was the one in her family that always collected the old relics. She had her great-grandmother's Tiffany lamp. She had these paintings, big paintings that they had saved, Mm-hmm. Her family, when they lost their money in the Depression, they sold the frames and kept the paintings. Well, they, just to try to put food on the table. In our family, our paintings were so bad that we threw the paintings away and put mirrors in the frames. Except that one. But that's one of the worst paintings that's ever been painted, except it has nice colors. The perspectives are completely just a disaster. And my dad hated it, but, it fills his pace. It was his dad's grandmother. Anyway, so Phyllis loved it. So anyway, I knew that we might, we could at least explore it. So we're looking at Redlands, and we have a realtor that's showing us places, and he showed us some of the darndest places you ever saw. The Kitching House is the white one on the corner of Palm and Center. That has the little carriage house behind with a dome on it.
It's yellow.
It is now, but it was white for years. Okay. It was the Kitching House, and there had been a nursery school there in the barn years ago. Anyway, we looked at that one, and we looked at the one that the Holmeses are in on Highland Avenue. Mm-hmm. That was for sale. We looked at that. We looked at Mr. Kent's house, which is the one where the Marins live now. The great big thing up on.
Yes, on Cajon and Summit.
Cajon and Summit. Yes, we looked at that, but that was $100,000. We couldn't win. Anyway, way beyond our. That's what it was then. Yeah. So anyway, we had gotten a set of photographs taken of the Morey House interiors about 1910 when the Cheneys lived there, and the Weismans had loaned them to us. So we'd go back from looking at houses, and then we'd go back to our little house, and then we'd pull these things out and say, oh, God, no. We've got to hold out for this.
For the Morey House.
We can't get, if there's a possibility, we need to hang on. So we would wait, and we would wait, and we would wait, and finally, one day they called and said, well, we've decided that we're going to sell the place. And so we went running over there right away. Okay, what do you want for it? We don't know what we want for it. Well, what are we supposed to do? Well, we don't know what to do, but we don't know what we want for it. Do you want to make us an offer? I said, no, that's my cell phone, forget it. So I went home and I talked to my dad. He said, offer to get a licensed appraiser to appraise it and get them to split the cost of the appraisal. And then you'll have something to work with. So Grigsby and Knorr, which was Al Grigsby, John's brother, had done appraisals for Dad, and it was a very fine outfit. So I suggested them. We had them, and they did it. They appraised it, and it was appraised at $35,000. Well, this is 1967.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that house was not in, it was very solid inside, and it was very well built, but it was in really crappy shape. Really not. So we went over, I talked to Dad, and he said, well, I'll help you out a little bit. So we went over and we said, well, we'll offer you the appraisal. Oh, we can't sell it for that. Well, what do you want for it then? Well, we don't know. Well,
They thought that was too low.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got to have more than that. So what'll we do? He said, well, we're gonna shop around, see what we can kind of an offer we can get. And I said, if you get an offer that's acceptable, will you let us meet it? Will you let us meet that offer? Yes, we'll do that. Sure. We'd be glad to have you have the house. We'll let you meet the offer. So we went back, and several months went by, and one day I got a call. We've had an offer. Oh, okay. How much is it? Come on over. So Phyllis and I run over to the Morey house and sit out. Would you like some gin and orange juice? They always served us gin and orange juice. They liked that. I do too. Anyway, so we sat in the drawing room drinking gin and orange juice in this place, and it's a huge room, and there was like one person in each corner of it. A great big room in between. I can remember looking all the way over to Florence Wiseman and all the way over to Willard.
This is the front room?
Yeah, the big drawing room. Yes, that's the drawing room. Anyway, so we sat there drinking our orange juice, and nobody said anything. I said, well, here we are. Yes? I said, well, you had an offer that's acceptable. Yeah, we did. Well, what is it? Well, we can't tell you. I said, wait a minute. How am I supposed to meet it if I don't know what I have to meet? I said, what? I didn't say it like that because I was definitely calm. I was working on things. And so he said, well, maybe you can guess it. I said, what? You know, he said, you just can't, maybe you can guess it. I said, do you mean I say, is it more than this? And you say yes or no. And I say, is it less than this? And you say yes or no. Well, you could do that. Now, these are adult people, a whole generation older than me. And here I am being subjected to this thing which is so utterly belongs on the playground, you know. I couldn't believe it in this wonderful... Anyway. So I said, well, is it more than... Well, we know it's more than $35,000. Yes, he said. Is it more than 40,000? Yes. Is it more than 45,000? No. Is it 43,000? No. I said, is it less than that? Yes. Is it 42,000? You just guessed it. At that point, he had not revealed it. I had guessed it. He was good with the guy that he said, I won't reveal it. I had guessed it. Then I had to go home and see where we were going to come up with 42,000, you know. But they wrote us a personal note for 30, I think it was. And we gave them 12. Oh. And they carried the paper. And the payments were $250 a month. Yes. 7.25% then.
Boy.
I think of the interest rates now, and I wonder how they ever got so low. We paid 7.25%.
Yeah. And you fixed it up.
Oh, yes. Yeah, the first thing we did was pave the driveway so the children could play on it. Mm-hmm. And that was a big deal. And then we got a roof on it eventually. And we stabilized it. We had a carpenter that practically lived with us that was doing repairs all around the porch. There were, places that were rotten, places that were split, and all this. We replaced wood. We did this, and Dad and I went through and went through all of the double hung sliding windows, and changed the sash cords on them, the cotton ropes. Some of them were gone. Dad showed me how you do it. You get in there and take the window out, and there's a little box you open up, and you get in there. Oh yeah, we went through the whole, just like that. We had to work over the hot water heating system. We brought in a boiler expert, and the old original Richardson boiler, which had been put in not by the Moreys, it didn't have central heat when the Moreys built it. It had stoves around here and there and fireplaces. But when the Cheneys bought it, they were very wealthy, and they came in and put a beautiful hot water system with radiators in all the rooms and everything, and a big boiler down in the basement, and there was a coal chute that went down there and a coal cellar down in there, and all this stuff. And and it had been, in Mr. Cheney's day, it had been converted to burn gas, but the gas burners that were in there from the 1930s. The boiler was from about 1910 probably, but the gas burners from 1930s. And the way they worked, there were two sets of buttons, almost like light switches, with a light in between them so you could tell if it was on or off. And one button turned on one burner, and then if it was extra cold, the other button turned on the other burner, so you could really heat that water up. But the pilot lights were not safety pilot lights. They were just two little pieces of steel pipe with a fire burning on the end of it, see, where you had little valves and the fire burnt. So once in a while, something would go through there and blow out the pilot light,
It's amazing that house
And
didn't burn down.
Yes.
Probably had knob and tube wiring too.
Well, it still does, and it doesn't hurt. There's nothing wrong with that. I could give you a whole dissertation on why that's good wiring. Anyway, it really is.
We'll do it after.
Not now.
Off camera.
No, but it is. Anyway, so the way it would work, you could control it from the upstairs back hall if you wanted, and you could control it from downstairs in the lobby, which was the little room right off the kitchen. And what we would do is Phyllis would open the door in the kitchen that went down to the cellar and stand there. And I'd push the button in the lobby. And if it didn't go, that meant it didn't light. I'd immediately shut it off. Then I'd have to go down in there and light that pilot because it meant the pilot was out. Mm-hmm. Then I'd light the pilot. Then I'd go back up and she'd listen. I'd push it. They'd go, then it was all right, see. And then it would, yeah. That was what it was. Well, anyway, Dad found this gentleman that came over and put a different burner in it, a beautiful big gas burner, and it saved us a lot of money because it was more efficient. Mm-hmm. But we were still using that original boiler, and up on the boiler was a great big gauge that said altitude, and that meant the altitude of the water in the system, because you have to fill the system from the basement all the way to the attic. Otherwise, you get an air block, and the water won't circulate. Mm. And so in the tank, in the attic, you have to have an expansion tank where the water expands and contracts as it heats and cools. And there's an old-fashioned gauge glass on the side, like coffee pots have, where you can see what the level of the water is and everything. And I'd have to go up to the attic and check the level. And if it was low, there was a valve in the basement. You could open that, and that would put water into the system. And then so somebody's in the basement.
Exercise. Somebody's
in the basement, somebody's in the attic. All the stairs are open, so you can holler back and forth. You're watching to see the water come up in the gauge. Okay, that's enough. Turn it off, and or either that or you go running down and shut it off. Mm-hmm. It's hilarious when you think about what you did in that house. And then it turned out that tank up in the attic was rotten, and we went to move it one time. The bottom came clear out of it, so we had to have a new tank made. And Dad and I installed that and put the gauge glass back, and it was fine. It was just like it was supposed to be. Mm-hmm. But those kind of things we did, we did that, and then I found out that you have to, with those radiators, there's a little valve a little key that you get, and you go around with a cup, and you have to open this valve on the end of the radiator, and the air comes out. You can't have any air in it, or it'll block it. The air comes out, and as soon as the water comes out, then you shut it. Now you've got a completely closed system, and the water will then flow by convection. The mm-hmm. hot water goes up and the cool water comes down. And it worked like a charm. But that's where the ghosts come from. There aren't any ghosts in there. What it is, when the boiler goes on, the entire system begins to warm up. Pipes all over the place. What happens with the water? It expands. What happens with the pipes? They expand. Uh-huh. The pipes expand and the pipes contract. And they creak and they pop. And they make these sounds. Uh-huh. That's what it is. And the other thing that does it is the trains going through San Mateo Canyon, the earth is so unstable between that terracina and down in the canyon that those trains send a shock wave. And in the summertime, we would hear it. In the summertime, the windows all open, we would sit in the library and the house would creak, a little bit like this. Then we'd hear the whistle. The mm-hmm. train was sending a shockwave in front of it. It happened over and over again, so I know that that's what it was. If it was only once, but no, it was all the time.
Were you ever in that house during an earthquake?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. A great one. Oh, yes. Oh, it went all over the place. Oh, God. And you should have heard the sash weights. Bang, 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 bang. You know, they ring. Mm-hmm. They go bong, bong in their little chambers, you know, mm-hmm. in the windows. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. It was really...
David Morey is said to haunt.
I never heard that it was David Morey. I think that is an extrapolation that somebody's pulled. Because I have read the Morey will, and there's no mention of the Coronado Hotel and whatever, and if it had been, it would have been there. It was a hotel in San Diego, but it was definitely not the Coronado.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Tom Ashley said, I'm going to repeat the story.
Don't say that, because there has been more history manufactured in this town.
I'm going to repeat the story. Sarah Morey dies. David is distraught. He hangs himself in the Del Coronado and now haunts the room.
That's not true at all.
Okay.
He went to a hotel in San Diego. Uh-huh. It was not the Coronado. And he went out on the balcony outside of his room and blew his brains out.
Oh.
It's all
the details are wrong.
Of course, I'm telling you, it's manufactured out of whole cloth. Oh, I hate that. And you should hear what I've heard about the Morey house.
Oh.
Oh, crap that people have come up with. Just assumptions, this and that. Oh, God. He did most all of the turning for that house himself. All those porch posts and all that stuff. He did a little of the carving, but not all, some of it. But, of course, the spindles on the main staircase going up are just really magnificent work. And he did all that. Mr. Morey did that himself. Anyway, they had not had any children. They had had a wonderful life together. They had met late in life. He had met her up in the gold country. He had had a dream that he was going to meet a beautiful woman in pink, and the next day he was walking along the flume that carried the water into the thing, and here comes Mrs. Morey walking down in a pink dress. Yes. Anyway, she was just amazing. Now, what Tom actually has found out is that she was the most acute businesswoman in the early days of Redlands. She was the first real businesswoman in this town and really knew how to invest and everything. So it was the people up there that sent her to explore Redlands and see if they should retire down here. And she's the one that did. Anyway, but they came down here with very little. Mr. Morey was working for a living still. He was probably in his late 60s, if not early 70s. And so he was working, doing carpentry work, helping build houses and stuff like this, going around. And he didn't even have a horse and wagon. He had a wagon that you pull with a handle that had cultivator wheels on it, and his big carpenter's toolbox was in there, and he'd walk to the jobs with that. Yeah, he was just dauntless. Anyway, and she was the one that put in the nursery of orange seedlings at their property down on Brookside, and made a killing on selling these little baby orange trees to the developers, mainly Matthew Gage of the Gage Canal in Riverside. So, but they had not had children and probably never would. And as I say, they married late. And so all of a sudden, with her success and his ability and the friendship of the Seymours, they decided to build a monument, and that would be their child. And so that house was their child. That's really what it was. And the more I think about it, the more emotionally I get, because I know what it felt like for me. And I have children, and I know what my children feel like. And I know what my children feel like toward that house, which is why that house was there, so that somebody could come along like me with children that could love it on behalf of the Moreys. I know that's what they had in mind. I know they were great people of faith. They helped build the Congregational Church. He carved the first pulpit for the church. They gave the land next to the church for the Sunday school building and the parsonage. You know, they loved the Lord. They loved the Redlands. And he was responsible for getting the Big Bear Dam in because of his experience up in the gold fields. He knew how to handle the big blocks of stone, and he showed them how. Once, when she died, he couldn't stand it. He was suffering from eczema, and it was summer. Well, it might not have been summer when she died, but anyway, he had eczema. But he was so broken by her death that he could not stand to be in the house without her. And he left, and he went down to the Seymours and stayed with them, and the girls had to come and get his personal things. He wouldn't even get that. They had to get his clothes. Mrs. Cryer was on that trip when they went to get the stuff, she and her sisters, and the Hosking girls. And they got these things and brought him down. And he stayed with the Hosking family. And the house was just shut. So I don't know how long went, how many months it was, or whether it was a year and a half, whatever. But he was trying to live, and he actually lived with a doctor for a while that was trying to treat the thing and have him as a live-in patient. The doctor was trying to get a hold of his money, is what he was doing. It was a very terrible thing. That's why it's all in this will. And it was hot, and he was suffering horribly from the itching. So he went to San Diego to try to get relief from the cool air down there. And it may have helped him a little bit, but he just took a good long look at life at that point, and it wasn't worth living. And he hadn't had a pistol with him. So he went, and as George Ide told me, instead of doing it in his hotel room where he would have soiled the wallpaper, it was very, he walked out on the veranda and did it. And the will was bound into 2 volumes. It is down in the county archives. I've seen it. I've handled it. I've read some of it. And it has the contents of his pockets, all this kind of stuff. It undoubtedly has the name of the hotel, if I want to, and it's definitely not the Coronado.
Okay, good. I
could never forget that. Anyway, Coronado. There is a haunted room at the Coronado, but it's haunted by a lady spirit, and I don't believe in that stuff anyway.
I might
They play with it.
Wrong.
Yeah, well, whatever. That's what happens. People remember things wrong, and then they tell it.
Tom's going to call me when he sees this.
Well,
I never said that.
That's probably true, and that's how these things happen. That's why I've heard that stuff. Oh my God, I've heard so much of that stuff over the years. Oh my goodness.
All right. Well, that's just a treasure.
Yes.
I'm so excited that you mentioned that you lived there, and then I got that story.
We repaired the big pocket doors so they'd roll back and forth again. We got up into the mechanism and all this stuff, Dad and I and stuff, and found, I got into all the mechanics of the place. And we got that thing so that it was all working like it did when it was new. It isn't quite that level right now, but it could be fixed again.